I'd like to welcome you all to our second of 3 ENA Fridays. I'm John Diamond, and I'm a Senior Systems and Solutions Engineer at Entuity. And with me today is my colleague, Pete Bartz, who's a Senior Systems Engineer. In today's session, we're going to show you how to go about customizing your own dashboards. And by the way, the ENA package is now available for download from both the Entuity FTP site for direct Entuity customers and from the BMC EPD portal if you are a BMC customer. As is the norm, if you've got questions, please use the chat panel, and we will make sure that we've got time at the end for questions if you've posted them. And as usual, this session is going to be recorded for your future reference. So with that, Pete, should we get started?
Absolutely. I wonder if we should do a quick review around what we covered last week for some of the basic dashboard navigation.
You know, I think that's an excellent idea. Let's take a look at the main default screen of the ENA package, and this is what you would expect to see. If you've just logged in and you don't have a custom homepage, you will be looking at this particular part of the screen as being the most important thing to begin your understanding. It's the Explorer, and it directly replaces the navigation tree that used to take up a big portion of the left-hand side of the screen in previous versions of the product. Now, the Explorer allows you to define the context in which the dashboard below is going to be operating. In other words, what it is that you're going to be looking at. And by default, it's looking at the view called My Network. And My Network contains all of the subviews that you have permission to access. Now, within the Explorer, the big blue button, if I click it, brings out a swipe-in dialog that allows me to see all of those subviews. I can directly select one just by clicking its name. So I'm going to select the By Office subview here, and that now becomes the focus of the dashboard below. That's the context. And you'll notice that this line to the right of the Explorer has just grown. We refer to that as the breadcrumb line, and you can actually access any part of the breadcrumb line. The part on the right is the current context. Now, I could go in to that Explorer button again and dig further into this view. So if I were to go to the right to this blue button, that will expand that view, and in there are 4 more subviews. I'm going to carry on expanding. I'll expand New York headquarters, and that's what's in the New York headquarters view. I'm going to select a device. If I had actually clicked the right blue button here, I would have drilled into that device and displayed all of its ports, but I'm just going to stay at the device level and select it. So you'll see we've got HQ01, which is in New York headquarters, which is in By Office, which is in My Network. So this dashboard is now focused on the HQ01 device, not a view, but a device. We've got a different set of dashboards displayed on the right to what we had when we were looking at the views. And these dashboards, these first 5, are referred to as the favorite dashboards. And that means it's going to try and put them on the screen in order that they can be easily chosen. On the right is a menu called All Dashboards, and everything, all of the dashboards, including the favorites that are applicable to the context that we're working in this case the device, are listed here. So I could select any of these device-level dashboards at any moment. Now, the next thing that you should really be aware of is that the Explorer, being a direct replacement to the old navigation tree, I could right-click on here and have context-sensitive options that are relevant to this device HQ01. I could select any of those. For example, I could bring up the remote terminal if I wanted to. But I could also go back to any other part of the breadcrumb line and do the same. If I wanted to do something to the By Office view, I could just right-click the By Office view, and these options would be in the context of the By Office view. Now, if you remember, on the previous version of the user interface, the Explorer had the Advanced tab on the very right-hand side of all of its tabs, and that allowed you access to all of the object attributes, all of the time series attributes, and also all of the associations to other component types that were associated to what it was that you were looking at. We've got similar concepts here But if I go across to the All Dashboards, you'll see we have an Attributes dashboard. That contains all of the object attributes and the time series attributes. If you want the associations, we've put them in a separate dashboard that is nice and easy to navigate around. Many of these dashboards here directly replace or are very similar to the tabs on the Explorer in the previous dashboard. For example, the Ports dashboard shows me a list of ports on that device, just like the Ports tab used to on the Explorer. The Flow dashboard gives me flow information about that device. The Resources dashboard gives me information about the processors, memory pools, and other resources on the device. And if I look down here, Configuration Monitor is a direct replacement for the Configuration tab on the old Explorer. These dashboards and the dashlets within them have these triple dot icons. These are menus. If I click it, you'll get menus that are applicable to the dashboard in this case. And if I click over here to the port summary, then that help would be applicable to the port summary dashboard. And down here, all of those options would be applicable to the events over time dashlet. And finally, up in the very top left-hand corner, we've got the main menu. And if I click that, you'll see access to items that don't rely upon a context. The administration option gives me a complete screen of administrative options, everything that I've got permission to have access to, and that's not in any context. Likewise, the preferences set my own personal preferences, and the reports give me access to the reporting system. So that's where you go for that information. And I think at that point, I've summarized pretty much what we spoke about, Pete. What we're going to be talking about this week is not only the fact that we've got all of these dashboards that were provided by Entuity, but we've also got dashboards. You can use that very same technology that we've used to build the dashboards yourself, and you can build your own. We have dashboard building capability, and I think we'll begin with a little compare and contrast. We had custom dashboards in the previous version in 16.5 and earlier versions, and I think you've got one set up on 16.5, haven't you, Pete, that you want to talk about mimicking in ENA?
I do, and I think that's a really good place to start. So if I take a look, let's go over to my 16.5 installation, and I think this type of dashboard, because it's focused on a specific set of devices, effectively using a view, is something that's really used pretty frequently by our customers. I think this is a pretty common layout. It may have different elements as the dashboard panels themselves, but it's something that's specific to a view. So you would actually have a New York dashboard as a context. So in 16.5, I've got I've got a dashboard that's got some incidents about New York. I've got topology about New York, and I've got some device status using actually a report as a dashboard element, again, that's focused on New York. So I think let's use this as a base, and let's create one in ENA. If I go over to my ENA interface here, I think this is something where I'm going to create a dashboard from scratch. I'm just going to start with a blank dashboard and then just add in the pieces that I want to pay attention to. So to do that, let's go underneath the All Dashboards menu here and go down to the bottom for the dashboard configuration. I'm just going to create a brand new dashboard, and because I want to focus this on New York, let's just call it New York, and I can leave most of the other layouts and filters and such as a standard setting as their default settings, but the piece that I want to pay attention to is the dashboard type right here. I'm going to change this to static, and the reason I want to do that is I want to be able to lock this dashboard down to just a single view. But I also want to display the dashboard and make it accessible in my list of dashboards only when I'm looking at the My Network context. If I'm looking at stuff about routers, I'm not seeing a dashboard about New York, because it could be a little bit misleading, get confusing. So I'm going to create a static dashboard type. We'll talk about some of the dynamic dashboards in a bit, but we'll start here. Finally, let's set my user group access so I can see the dashboard. I'm just going to make this accessible to myself, and I can leave all of the other user groups that I've got alone for the time being. So let's save this, and now what I've got is a dashboard with a wide open canvas. So I can add dashlets into this as I need to, and if I select the dashlet button, you see a list of all of the system-provided dashlets that I've got access to. There's a bunch of them here. I'm going to use the one, because I want to do a list of incidents, I'll use the one that's the incident list. So I'm going to select it here, and I'll hit the next button, and I've got the settings for that dashlet. I'm going to leave the name and all of the filters as they are default, but the piece that I want to pay attention to here is the dashlet source. Because I want to focus this on New York specifically, I want to change this to a fixed object. Now that I've got that changed, I need to pick the object that I'm going to tie it to, and it's just easy enough to just go in and find the view that I want, and I want to use the New York headquarters view as my source. Very easy to do. I've now created a dashlet, and it's taking all of the real estate that I've got access to. I'm just going to shift this up a little bit. Now in 16.5, in previous versions, you were limited by the pre-configured or configured layouts that you had for dashboards in the system. That's all gone away. In ENA, you can totally resize, move around, and shift your dashboard elements, effectively dashlets, in your dashboard however you want to. So I'm just going to move this back up. Let's get it to take full width of my screen because I've got incidents and I've got a lot of columns that I want to display. And that one's all set. Let's add another dashlet. I want to put a map in the bottom left. So let's go into my dashlet list and just scroll down to the map. Let's hit next. We're going to do the same thing for the dashlet source. We're going to pick a fixed object. And I'm going to pick a fixed object, again picking the New York headquarters view right here. Now it's taking up all the real estate that I've got left, but I'm just going to shrink this down and take about half the screen so I've got some space for my third one. Now in 16.5, again, in this space, I'm using a report. I could actually do the same thing in ENA by calling a report and have it show up. But I think, especially if I've got a view that's got a lot of devices in it, I think it's more helpful to have a summary of the status of all the devices. So one of the things that we can do in ENA now is I can actually pick a dashlet that's actually all about a summarization of device status. So I'm going to pick this one right here. I'm going to do the same thing with the source and select the fixed object and go back to picking the New York headquarters view right here. So that's really all I need to do to build this dashboard. Let's take a look at a preview. And you can see that I've got some open incidents, again, focused just on New York. I've got my New York topology, and I've got a list of 13 devices that are in that view. And currently, I don't have any issues because they're all okay. So this is really what I want to be able to do. So let's go ahead and save it. And let's exit the dashboard builder. Go back to my home page, and you'll see in my list of dashboards, I've got a brand new dashboard called New York. JD, what do you think of this as a comparison?
I think that not only did it replace one that you'd built there for 16.5, but I definitely agree that the device status dashlet is a better dashlet for that summarization, particularly of a large view, than the report. Now, you know, on that system you're working with, there is a view for an office in California. Now, if I was challenged to create a very similar dashboard to the one you've just done for the Californian office, what I'd probably do is make a copy of that dashboard rather than build it from scratch because you've already built it for me. I'd make a copy of it, rename it to California, and go into each of those 3 dashlets and change the view to the Californian view as opposed to the New York view. But you know, if I had 200 views, I probably wouldn't appreciate having to do that 200 times. Can you take us through the new approaches to make your life easy in that area?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And even in the case where you've got a handful of views that you'd want to focus on, creating individual dashboards for each one of them is more work than you need to do, I think. So in ENA, we have that concept of a dynamic dashboard. I showed you that as we built this initial one. And let's go back to that. Now, I like this layout. I really do. This is actually helpful if I'm looking at, in a case of remote locations, regional branches, groups of buildings, and you name it. So I'm going to use this layout, and instead of just editing the layout and changing it, I'm going to actually make a duplicate of this. And because it's more generic, let's just call this locations. And the key that I want to pay attention to, again, is changing this from static to dynamic. Now, a dynamic dashboard allows me to focus the contents of that dashboard on my current context. And in my case, I'm going to focus this on things that are views. So this dynamic dashboard is applicable for a view. It's going to be resetting itself based on my current context, which shows up in my breadcrumbs line up here. So again, because this is a new dashboard, let's set up my access control, hit done here, and I've done most of the work now already. Again, the thing I want to pay attention to, like JD, what you said, was changing the settings for each one of my dashlets. Instead of focusing on a fixed object, let's use the dashboard as a source. So my current context will drive the dashboard, and the dashlets will actually be picked up from that. Let's go ahead and hit done and change the other two to do the same thing. And let's take a look at a preview. So I've now got the My Network view. I've got incidents from all my devices. I've got a list of the state of all my devices. And again, even in the preview, as I'm building this dashboard, I can go in and change my context. So let's test this for the by office view. Again, it's updating correctly. This is really what I want. So I'm going to save this and exit. And what you can see now is I've now got this brand new locations dashboard available to me for any one of the views that I want to focus on.
And that saves a lot of effort when it comes to manually creating lots of dashboards for different views where you wanted the same style of presentation. You know, you've done a couple of operations, one on each of those dashboards, that I just want to come back to, because it caught me out in the past. And that is when you create a dashboard, or even when you duplicate an existing dashboard, the new dashboard will have access granted to nobody. That means if you don't make a change to the access groups, then you won't see it in your menu because you won't even be able to permit access to it. So don't forget, when you create a new dashboard or duplicate an existing one, go down to the access groups and make sure that you set them up appropriately. Okay, Pete, now we've been talking about building a dashboard from scratch. One thing which is worth touching on is that Entuity provides a whole collection of dashboards, some view dashboards, device dashboards, port dashboards, and a whole bunch of other dashboards for other purposes. But these dashboards are considered read-only. We call them system dashboards, so you can't make changes to them. But you know, from time to time, I think some of those dashboards might almost, but not quite, address the customer requirement. And there is a way to go about using it as a starting point. Do you want to take us through how you might effectively make a change to a read-only dashboard?
Absolutely. And I think a perfect example to use maybe as a test is the summary dashboard. Now, I like the summary dashboard in general. I like focusing on my network and focusing on my views. It gives me the current state of both any sub-views as well as any issues with the contents of that view. But this might be a good example to use to make a change. Maybe we should take the sub-view summary from here and replace and put a map in it. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea. That's the sort of thing that some of my users might like. Maybe not all of them, but some of the users might like that one.
Okay, well, let's use this as an example then. So again, the base layout is really there. I don't have to create anything from scratch. What I'm going to do is let's go in and take a look and duplicate this dashboard. Now it's going to come up with just a timestamp appended to the name of the existing dashboard. So I'm just going to leave this for now, and we'll come back to this in a minute and clean it up. But the thing that I want to pay attention to is I'm still going to maintain this as a dynamic dashboard, and I'm just going to set up the user access for it. Now, because the summary dashboard is in my list of favorites, let's make this one of my favorites as well. We'll hit done here, and the dashboard's set up. All I need to do now is replace the sub-view summary with a map. So let's delete this dashlet and go in and add one and pick the map. We'll select next. Again, we can keep all of the standard defaults for the map. And we're set. So I could preview this, but let's just save it and take a look and see what it looks like for real outside of the dashboard editor. So I'm focused on the by office view right here, and you can see I've got another dashboard sitting in front of my original summary. Now, this could be confusing, and it's something that I really want to clean up. And there's a feature in ENA that I really like, and that is if I actually change the name of this dashboard to Summary, because this dashboard is at a higher level in my list of dashboards, it's actually going to replace this when I select the Summary dashboard. So the original Summary dashboard is still there, but I'm going to use the one that I created because I've created a higher precedence. So let's actually do that. Now, because this is a dashboard I created, I can actually go in and edit it instead of having to duplicate it and start from scratch. So let's go edit the dashboard. We'll go into the settings for the dashboard, and let's just change the name. We'll hit done. Let's save it. We'll exit it. And that's exactly what I was looking for. I've got a summary dashboard. As I change my context and I look at different views, I can move around and pick my context and focus on different areas of my network, and that summary is going to be the one that I see. JD, what do you think of that?
Well, effectively, for an administrator, that is exactly equivalent to having modified one of our standard dashboards. Even though it's read-only, it has the same effect. But if I logged in as a non-administrator who wasn't permitted to see that new dashboard, I would see the standard summary dashboard. So you've got the best of all worlds from that respect. Now, there is another capability within the dashboards that we've taken advantage of within our own dashboards that we want to show to you, because you can take advantage of this as well when building your own dashboards. Peter's talked about an individual dashlet either having a fixed object for its context or taking the dashboard context, which is defined by the Explorer line. But there's a third option where one dashlet, or multiple dashlets in fact, can take their context from another dashlet in the same dashboard. Pete, you want to show what we mean by this?
Yeah, let's find a good example of this, because there's one in the system already that we can use to at least review from. Let me take a look at CA01. Let's go take a look at the summary dashboard for that device. And CA01 has got some QoS metrics on it. So there's actually a QoS Standard Dashboard that I can take a look at right here. And this is the one that we can use, because it's using that concept of an internal reference where the individual dashlets are relying on an active context in another dashlet. So everything is really empty right here because I haven't selected anything. I've got a policy map here, and if I select this, now don't click on the hyperlink, but if you just select this as an item in that dashlet, I'm now populating all of the class maps. And if I do the same type of thing and just select a class map, I can show the performance metrics for each one of them. So I can just select a different one, and I'm going to activate dynamically on demand the metrics that are for that specific class. So this is really showing a concept of dashlets that are relying on an active context within another dashlet. And I'm actually doing this across 2 layers. So I think this is really helpful as a model, because you could actually do this for other types of functions depending upon what you've got for requirements.
Yep, I can certainly see that one thing you might want to do is to have one dashlet providing a list of views. You select a view, and the neighboring dashlet then tells you all of the devices within it. You select a device within that, and then you've got other dashlets which might tell you about information on those devices or even about the ports on them. So you've got a lot of flexibility in building dashboards with their own integrated navigation. Effectively, what you've got here, beyond dashlets, you've got a user interface builder within the product, because the user interface is a collection of dashboards, and you can link it all together internally within an individual dashboard or between the dashboards. So that said, one point I just want to go back to that Pete showed, but it's very important. There is a critical difference between those blue hyperlinked names, which are listed as display name, and selecting the line or the row in a table. If you click on a blue hyperlinked name, it will jump to that object. That object will become the context. It will update the Explorer line, the breadcrumbs, and it will bring you up a brand new dashboard in that context. If you select the line in the table without clicking the hyperlink, then it's just that table line that's been selected, and if you've got other dashlets that are using the context from there, then they will be updated. Critical difference between the two. Now at this point, it's time to take a look at the questions that have come in. So let's see, we've got one here. How many devices can you effectively display before it becomes too busy to view? If you were thinking of how many can you see on the screen in one go without scrolling, it would be however many lines there were within the relevant dashlet. But these dashlets that contain tables will automatically have scroll bars if the tables are bigger than the dashlets. So you can scroll up and down and display thousands of entries. So it very much depends upon what you consider the limits to be. One here looks like dashboards have changed a lot for the better. Can I assume that none of my current dashboards will work? Well, that's a very good point. In fact, when you do the upgrade, virtually everything on the system that is currently configured for your existing version of the product, such as 16.5, will be upgraded and will work immediately after the upgrade. However, custom dashboards are the key exception to that rule, because most of the cells within an existing custom dashboard will actually contain a reference to screens from the old user interface that no longer exist. It really didn't make any sense for us to just do a blind upgrade of those custom dashboards, because they just wouldn't have worked. So we do not upgrade the current dashboards. What we recommend is go in and do an audit of all of your custom dashboards, maybe some screenshots, take a look at what you've got and who they've been allocated to, and then set about building new ones to replace it. You may well find, particularly given what Pete's shown you about dynamic dashboards, that you need far fewer dashboards to achieve your end goal than you had previously. Okay, got another one here. Can you auto-populate the maps by names or subnets? Well, bear in mind, a map is a graphical representation of the contents of a view. So you don't populate the map as such, you populate a view, and then you look at the view using the map dashboard or the dashlet. So as far as view building goes and maintaining the content of view, views can be constrained automatically by IP address ranges, which are tantamount to subnets. And you can also control the content of view using device name-based wildcard filters. So yes, they can be controlled and automatically maintained based upon the names of devices, by strings in their location, and by a whole variety of other mechanisms. So the answer is a resounding yes to that question. I do have another question here, and that is there a way to control what dashboards are being shown and in what order they appear? In fact, Pete, do you want to bring up the list of dashboards and tell us about that?
Sure. Let's take a look at my all dashboards list right here. So this is what I've got accessible to me as an administrator, and if I go into the dashboard configuration, you've got that list of all the dashboards. I'm looking at it in context of a view. I can do the same thing for devices because you can have different dashboards for each type. But in this case, the order is important. Again, you know, as we talked about, I created a summary dashboard for myself and made it accessible to administrators, and it's a higher order than the system delivered. You can tell it's a system dashboard because it's got the padlock here, summary dashboard. So because of that, that's what allowed me to replace that in my list. Now I can reorder these, or I can actually disable them if I want to. I can right-click and enable and disable dashboards to make them visible or not. I can change the access control to make sure specific groups see just their dashboards. And I can also change the order of the dashboard right here by clicking on the blue button. So based on this, say example, let's see, maybe I wanted to take the map and make that the first dashboard that I see in my favorites. Now the map is already set up as a favorite, so if I just change the order by dragging this up here, the map is now going to be the first one in my list. So that'll define the order in which I see both my favorites as well as the order of all the remaining dashboards I've got access to. And you can see that I've updated here. And if I go back just to my home page, you can see the map is now first in line.
Now, Pete, you actually just touched upon a subject I think we ought to talk about this momentarily. You clicked on the Entuity company logo, and that took you to this home page. Can you tell us about that?
Oh, yes, I did, and actually I used this feature quite a bit. Now, in 16.5, you have the capability to go into your preferences and set your home page. In ENA, we have the same feature, and I activate my home page based on clicking on the logo up here in the upper left. If I want to change that, again, I just go into the preferences, and I could actually change this, make this map my home page just by making it active and then hitting this button right here. So I could actually change that, and that would now be my new home page. So you can log in and have your own custom home page when you log into the system.
In fact, in this situation, we've got a custom dashboard on this system called Homepage. And
yep,
that's what it does. It just displays that three-dimensional picture. So that's why that was coming up, because we've got that configured up as the homepage. Now, I've got another question that's just come in. Do the maps reflect a status by color of devices or services within it? Do you want to just touch on that?
They absolutely do. So again, the maps themselves are based on, if I go into the by office map, I'll just activate my maps and drill into maybe New York headquarters. So if we're looking at this map, I'm actually showing the state of devices and connections and any incidents that are going on with these devices. And these will be updated in real time. I can certainly change and highlight and just look at services and paths and individual views within the context of a map. But the map is active. So it's going to update based on any issues. Like I've got some issues on these interfaces right here. If I want to show the details, you can see that I've got some issues going on with a port. I can drill on that to go into the incident viewer, and I see that I've got some inbound faults coming on this one interface.
Great. Okay. I think that answers the question. I can't see any more questions coming in today. So with that, I think you've now seen the new dashboards, the dynamic dashboards, and that it's a lot easier to customize them to fit your network management requirements. Entuity Network Analytics was truly designed with you in mind, a customer-driven application that's easy to extract and use the data that you need. Custom dashboards add to your management experience and illustrate how you manage your unique network. Remember, too, that it's 100% mobile enabled. So that means when you're sitting in a meeting, you've got your NOC in your pocket. And that gives you access from anywhere that you've got access to that server from your phone. You can also make changes to administration aspects because you've got a full suite of functionality from your mobile device, exactly equivalent to what you've got at the desktop. The redesigned ENA will save you time, offer new trend and predictive analysis, and help you support your constituents' digital-based services. So, with that, let's wrap up our second of 3 ENA Fridays. We hope you're starting to see the value that ENA is going to bring in support of your complex network. By the way, we will be sending you the recorded versions of all 3 of these sessions in one email at the end. So with that, we look forward to seeing you all back next Friday on the 29th for the 3rd and final ENA Friday. And the topic will be the new features found in ENA. So with that, thanks for attending.